Good evening. It is time for the next rendition of Understanding the Implications of Abolishing Property Taxes. I'm Andy Rose. I'm your Township Administrator. On behalf of the Concord Township Trustees and Fiscal Officer, welcome. How many of you have heard about an initiative to abolish property taxes in the state of Ohio? Every single one. Okay, good. So I'm not just going to, hey sir, I've got some handouts right here. Okay. Grab some. So there's been a lot of discussion. The trustees, fiscal officer, myself, we've all gotten a lot of phone calls. We get stopped when we're out and about to talk about property taxes. And so we thought it would be a good idea just to put out some information about what the implications would be of abolishing property taxes. This is an informational session. It's not fear-mongering. It's not browbeating. Everybody's decision is everybody's decision. We're just merely putting out information, and I'm happy to answer questions. We're going to talk about the current situation and where we're at right now. We're going to touch on the breakdown of tax dollars as it relates to Concord Township. In some of the previous sessions, we had folks, attendees that came that were from other communities. So if you're from another community, I don't think anybody is, but if somebody's from another community and you want to know the breakdown of your taxes, I'll be happy to get with you after the presentation. We can exchange information and I can give you that breakdown for your specific community. But we're going to touch on the breakdown of tax dollars so you know where your money's going. We're going to talk about the issue that's directly before us, which is, in a nutshell, abolishing property taxes. We're going to talk about the impact. We're going to talk about options for alternative revenue. We're going to talk about some tax reform ideas in the state legislature and some of the things being kicked around. We're going to talk about some myths and rumors, and I'm going to try to dispel some of those and put some light on some of those. And then, obviously, questions. I am not a save your questions to the end. If you have a question, I'd rather just have the dialogue while we're on whatever particular part that you're curious about, and we'll talk through it. This is open communication. It's not I talk, you listen, and leave. It's, I encourage dialogue. It's healthy. I will not touch on national politics, though. I'm not going to go there. Too messy and controversial. So, what's our current situation? Right now, in the state of Ohio, statewide, approximately $22 billion, that's with a B, $22 billion is collected in property taxes across the entire state. About 60%, this is statewide numbers, approximately 60% goes to schools. In Concord Township, it's about 57%. 17 to 22% goes to county government and associated districts. Associated districts would be developmental disabilities, Adamsport Crime Lab, Lakeland Community College, Metro Parks, and you'll see a whole list of those here shortly. Lake County's at about 20%. 18 to 23% goes to local township, but that local government. In our case, it's the local township. Concord Township is at 23%, so 23 cents of your tax dollar is what supports Concord Township. The current situation, how many of you thought the reevaluation process was fantastic? I don't see a show of hands. It was while they followed the state law and they did it efficiently, it is an extremely unpopular process. There is no real true relief. I shouldn't say no relief. There is relief, but there's no real significant, meaningful relief for seniors and low-income folks trying to stay in their home. The Homestead Exemption Act, it was at $40,000, and the state legislature graciously and wonderfully raised it to $42,500. Gee, thanks. I don't know that $2,500 really made much of a difference. Tax foreclosures, I know that the Abolish Property Tax Group has talked about that quite a bit. It is something that is part of our current situation, but it's very unpopular and it's extremely rare. I'm speaking for Lake County and talking with the treasurer. It is an extremely rare thing that happens. And then the last thing on the current situation is to touch on what your the breakdown of tax dollars. These are in mills, and I'm going to give a shameless plug right here. About a year ago, I gave a different presentation called Understanding Your Property Taxes. And it broke down Concord Township property taxes, and it also explained how they can get calculated. It also explained the inside-outside millage. It talked about the effects of House Bill 920 and the reduction factor. That presentation is still on the Concord Township website and linked to our YouTube channel. So you can go back and watch me babble about that. And then this one will be posted probably by the end of the week, and it will be right next to it. So some of the things are repeats, so I just took some abbreviated slides, updated them for this year. But as you know, or may not know, Concord Township has 3 zip codes, 3 school districts that are within a township. 2/3 is Riverside School District, 1/3 is Menor, and then there's a tiny sliver, I don't think it's quite 1%, down in the southern corner that ties to the Chardon School District. Those are the effective tax rates for each respective school district. You can see Riverside and Menor. How many of you live in Riverside School District? How about Menor? Okay. So they're very close to each other. They're not even a half a point apart. So these are the taxes levied by Concord Township. You've got the general fund, road and bridge. These are both inside villages. Concord Township is allowed to have 3 mills of unvoted. It's baked into the Constitution. Speaking of which, anybody know when the state started property taxes in the state of Ohio? Anybody know what year? It's a trivia question. You win a lollipop. The first taxes were assessed in the state of Ohio in 1825. It was placed into the Constitution, I want to say 1851, 1852. Property taxes were put into the Constitution, the state Constitution. So property taxes have been around a long time.
What's the difference between inside and outside?
I'm going to explain that right now. So inside millage is guaranteed. We get guaranteed 3 mills of inside millage. And then the trustees years ago set that as 1.4, or about 55% goes to roads and bridges, and about 45% goes to the general fund. You don't vote on these at all. These are just there. The county has 1 mill. I think the school's at 4.7, and Metro Parks gets 0.1 mil. I don't know why. I've never been able to figure out why the parks gets a 0.1 inside millage, what they do. The ones that say outside, those are the ones that you vote on. Those are the ones that you go to the ballot box. Anything that you go to the ballot box is outside millage. It's decided by the people. So we have 2 fire levies. We have a road levy, safety forces that predominantly pays for the Lake County Sheriff's Office, and then a little bit left over for fire. And then I don't know why the bottom is. Hey, how about that?
How come there's 2 roads, one on the inside, one outside?
I'm going to explain that next, as soon as I figure out what I did with my presentation. There we go. So, and then we have the bond levy, which paid for Fire Station 1. The reason there are 2 is this is your gross tax rate right here. But this is what you're actually paying over here. Because if you remember when you go to the ballot, you'll see, Concord Township or Adams Board or Metro Park, whoever it is, will say, we would like you to consider the passage of a 2 mil levy, which will collect, and then there's a dollar amount there, $1.65 million. to be collected annually, starting with tax year 2025. The most important figure in that ballot language is how much money we collect annually. Let's say it's 2.3 million. So we can never collect more than 2.3 million on the fire protection levy. So, as new development comes in, as a manufacturing company comes in, as houses get reevaluated to a higher rate, taxes don't go up. If your house value went up 20% in the last reevaluation, your taxes didn't go up 20%. They went up by a little bit by the inside millage, but it drops the effective millage rate. The fire levy, the second one here, 3.9, that was the one that was passed in November, just this past November. It was passed at 3.9, and is immediately upon passage that January, it went from 3.9 to 3.07. As houses are built and values go up, that will continue to go down, just like these other ones. The 2.7 is 1.6, 2 is 1.1, 4 is 2.38, because of the reduction factor. And I'm going to talk about the reduction factor here in a little bit. But what you pay is the actual tax rate, or the other thing they call it is the effective millage rate. So this is where Concord Township stacks amongst the 5 townships in Lake County. Leroy Township's at 9.8, we're at 11.6. Painesville and Perry Township are 14s respectively. Madison Township's at 20.25. To be fair, and I put the hash there, Madison Township has their own police department, where Painesville Township and Concord Township utilize the sheriff's department. And having your own police department is great, but it's more expensive. So that's where we stack amongst the townships. This is what I was talking about when I talked about the county, 18 to 20%. These are all the different entities. The general fund, that's what goes to support the actual county operations. They get 1 mil. That's inside millage. All the rest is outside millage voted on by the people. So you have ADAMS, which is the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, Mental Health Services Board. DD, which is Developmental Disabilities. A lot of people just call it Deepwood. Narcotics Agency, Children's Services, Crime Lab, Senior Levy, Metro Parks, Lakeland Community College. As you can see, some of these levies have been around for a while. It was at 17, and it's now down to 10.17. And then you get into the schools. So I've got the three pillars there: Riverside, Menor, Chardon, and their respective going there. So Riverside's at 25 and change, 27 and change for Menor. Chardon's at 30.69. And then you have to factor in libraries, joint vocational school. This is Auburn Career Center. And then how many of you know what the Lake County Financing District is? That's in part of the Riverside slice. It's not in the Menor slice. Lake County Financing District was started in the late 80s as an opportunity for the eastern school districts to get additional funding. And it is Madison, Perry, Fairport, Harvey, and Riverside. And a financing district was created to support them. That levy was passed back in the late 80s, I believe. And then they collect that Lake County Financing District collects that money and then distributes it, I believe, on a per pupil basis to those schools. And it's been renewed. It's never been increased, so it went from, it started at 4.9, it's at 1.46. So that's how you even out basically the Riverside and the Menor. So this is the roll-up of the whole thing. If you're in the Riverside School District, your millage is 50.93. If you're in the Menor School District, it's 50.56. And for those handful of folks in the Chardon School District, it's 55.15. Now, we talk about why are the numbers different? Why is the gross so different from the actual tax rate? If you look at your tax bills, in the top of the tax bill, you'll have this section in the upper left corner, underneath your name and all that. Full disclosure, this is Andy and Pam Rose's tax bill from my personal house. I didn't want to put anybody else's tax bill up there. I didn't think it was appropriate. But this is my tax bill. So if you see, I have gross tax rates. I have 126.67, but my effective tax rate is 54.03. Because what happens is, how many of you remember President Ford? I know, Mr. Golding, you're a little young to remember President Ford. President Ford, who took over from Richard Nixon in August of 1974, was fighting inflation like crazy. In the 1975-76 time frame, he walked around wearing a win button that meant whip inflation now. I remember sitting in the passenger seat of my dad's Pontiac in gas lines. Those of you that remember gas lines. That being said, long story short, property taxes, housing was going up like crazy, and property taxes followed property values at the time, so you didn't have this reduction factor. So people were, if your house value went up 20% on a reevaluation in 1975-76, your tax bill went up 20%. It matched. And the citizens had enough, and there looked like Frankenstein's castle down in Columbus. There were pitchforks, torches. Everybody was going after the state legislature, so they came up with House Bill 920. And I go into a deeper dive on this in my other presentation, but long story short is, what that says is, if you remember me talking about the ballot language and there's a monetary amount there, you can't collect more than that monetary amount. So property taxes get adjusted so that we can never collect more than that amount that you voted on originally. In order to get more money, we would have to come to the vote. An organization has to come to the voters for new money, a new levy, or they have to do, you probably heard of a renewal plus or a replacement. A replacement levy, which was just outlawed by the state legislature in this last budget bill, a replacement levy says we want to replace our safety services levy with a new safety services levy at the same amount. So it wasn't for collecting it 2.38. If you do a replacement, it just takes that exact levy back up to 4. So it is an increase. So, long story short, because they can't collect, a local entity cannot collect more than what was voted on, my gross taxes are $10,707.44. This reduction factor, and everybody can look on their tax bills and you'll see this, it gives the monetary amount. So of that $10,700 and change, $6,100 and change gets deducted from my tax bill. And so my raw tax, my subtotal is $4,500 and change. I get the non-business credit. I get the owner occupancy credit because I live in my home. I don't qualify for homestead exemption. So my net taxes are $4,089.20. And then anybody in Concord Township and in my community, we pay $42 to Lake County Stormwater for stormwater management. So that's the reduction factor. The House Bill 920 is very, very important. And it's 60, to me it's $6,100. You know, so it's a lot. And there are arguments for and against House Bill 920. So, long story short, here's the breakdown. This is for Concord Township. Schools and library at 57.2, Lake County's 19.9, Concord Township is 22.9 when you break it down to the decimal. But there's a visual of where your funds are going out of your tax bill. And remember that the county includes the roll-up of all those other entities, because there's no other real clean place to put them without putting 400 tiny, tiny slices of the pie, and it just loses something. So, what's the issue that's before us today? We've all heard about abolishing property taxes. There is a small group of citizens, and I think it was 5, that started a petition to eliminate property taxes by amending the state constitution. They want to remove property taxes from the state constitution. And so they crafted up a constitutional amendment language. They went out and got 1,000 signatures, which is what you needed in order to get it submitted to the state attorney general's office. Attorney General Yost approved the language, saying, yeah, he's not endorsing it by approving it. He's merely looking at it from a legal standpoint, saying, yes, this is an appropriate, constitutionally worded sentence. It's a single issue, and it passes the muster or the litmus test to get it onto the ballot. From there, it goes to the ballot board, and the Ohio Ballot Board approved it, which then authorized this organization to start collecting signatures via petition. They're currently all over the state of Ohio collecting, circulating petitions to collect signatures. They need just shy of 419,000 signatures in order to get this onto the ballot. Obviously, of registered voters. Signatures have to come from at least 44 of the 88 counties, and each of the 44 counties or more have to have 5% or greater of the number of people that voted in the last governor's election. So the requirements are stringent, but they're there. If they're successful, there's talk of May or November of 2026. I don't think it can go in May, but somebody said there may be a loophole that they can go in May because it's a governor's primary, but I think it'll be November of 2026. I think there's language that says constitutional ballot initiatives have to be done during a general election, which would be November. If there's a loophole there or language that lets them move it up to May, maybe so, but everything indicates, and I've heard November of 2026 to, if they get enough signatures and they all get certified. Talk to folks in the political campaign arena. They seem to think in order to get 419,000 good signatures, you probably need to collect between 550 and 600,000 total signatures, because people move. Some people aren't registered to vote, but they signed the petition, all those types of things. So that's the guess. No one knows how many signatures they have. They won't share that information. So that's fine. But the issue before us isn't so much them running the petition, is if it's successful, there is no plan to replace that lost revenue. None. Zero, zilch. There is no plan to replace that lost revenue. 73% of Concord Township's revenue is from property taxes. 73%. So we won't get very far into the new year without some type of revenue replacement in order to maintain the services that we maintain, to include rec, and you're sitting in their community center now. We don't have the ability, townships, now I'm going to get township specific, townships do not have the ability to utilize a different revenue stream. We can't institute a sales tax, we can't institute an income tax. That's against the law. We have a small joint economic development district, which is primarily the hospital across the street and a few other strong businesses that have voluntarily joined. They contribute a 1.75% income tax, but that's part of the 27% that we do receive. That's, there's still 73% revenue that we're losing. It is a significant, whether you're some cities, it's 15% of their income is from property tax. Some cities, it's 40, 50% of their revenue. So it's a significant impact, especially to townships, and it directly affects fire, EMS, police, roads, zoning, recreation, and all the services that we provide, that a community provides to its residents. So, I'm not going to, I gave the slides out for a reason because I don't want to read 2 slides of chapter. I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but I'm sure most of you have heard of municipal bonds, and that's how a lot of governments finance large projects. Lake County is building a new a jail and sheriff's department right across the street from the old one in Lake County. That's a $200 and some odd million project. That was bonded. Our fire station was built with a bond that was backed by a voter levy. Lots of road projects, especially county, ODOT, they use bonds to pay for large infrastructure projects. The state of Ohio is going to probably bond the work to do the reconstruction work on State Route 44. How many of you know they're getting ready to redo State Route 44 from Capitol down to Menor Avenue? Menor Road, I should say. That's likely a bonded project. That's how they finance things. Well, the problem is bonds are property tax based at the county and local level. And it's the primary backer, and there's things in the Constitution and provisions in the Ohio Revised Code that talks about the contractual covenants and security. So when property taxes go away, that's the primary source that's backing the bond. It then becomes a breach of contract. There was a very detailed letter that was sent by the 5 major bond council houses in Ohio to the state legislature when they were talking about, this was when they were just talking about killing inside millage. And they said, please don't do this. It's fraught with problems, and you're going to cause a ton of lawsuits because the bondholders, i.e. investors, are going to sue you for breach of contract. My biggest concern, I appreciate the lawsuits and the breach of contract piece, but this is the scarier part to me, is political subdivisions will have rating downgrades because we don't have property tax. So that affects credit ratings, and yes, we have a credit rating. We have one from Moody's. The other big one is Standard & Poor's, if you've heard of that. We have a bond rating, which is the equivalent of your credit score. So the cost of replacement debt goes higher because we'll pay more in interest because, and these aren't my words, these are financial and attorneys, I should say. Alternate forms of security, sales tax, income tax, they're viewed as weaker forms of security than property tax. So that's going to raise the cost of doing infrastructure projects. That's my big concern. But all that's there. If anybody wants a copy of the letter that was sent to the State House, I am happy to share it. I have it in my office if you want to read it. It's actually quite fascinating. So, let's talk about options to replace revenue from property tax elimination. How do we replace this money? There are a lot of different issues, and how many of you are aware that the governor formed a tax reform study commission, maybe? I don't remember the exact, but they're looking at property tax reform in the state of Ohio. Their report is due to the governor by September 30th. There are folks from all over the state of Ohio. Our county auditor, Chris Galloway, is on that statewide committee. They're looking at all kinds of different things, but then you have different organizations. Ohio Township Association is looking at ideas. The Ohio Auditors Association of Ohio is looking at ideas. The County Commissioners Association of Ohio is, Ohio Municipal League. Everybody's got different ideas and everybody's kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks. In the end, it's going to come down to the state legislature. They're the only ones who can make the changes. Everybody's going to feed recommendations. Some of the things being talked about is authorizing townships to collect a local income tax. I've heard everything from 2 to 3.5% local income tax. But implementation is going to take some time. There's talk of, schools have the ability to implement an income tax via ballot initiative. I don't know if you're aware of that. There are some schools, and actually I think it's Wycliffe School District on the west side of the county. They have something on the ballot this November for an income tax. So I'll be curious to see how well that's received in that community. But if you get rid of property taxes and then you have local government, townships, and then schools implement a higher income tax or start an income tax, Riverside and Mentor don't have an income tax right now. They would certainly go that route immediately, I think, should property taxes go away. So now you got local government coming in for your paycheck, you've got the schools coming in for your paycheck. That's gonna raise the deductions in your paycheck significantly. The other concern is reciprocity. So you work in Mentor, you live in Concord Township, you pay your city tax to Mentor, your 2%, and it stays in Mentor. Well, it's not going to do Concord Township much good. Or you live in Mentor and you work in Willoughby, or you work in Concord. That's not going to do Mentor any good. So I'm curious to see if communities will remove the reciprocity, which means you'll end up paying 2% to your employer's community and 2% to your home community. So that's based on a factor of 2%, and then you add in a school tax, let's say 1.5, you're at 5.5. These are all different ideas being kicked around, and I think that gets exorbitant, so I don't know if that's going to work. But the biggest thing is, I think even if they turn it on for townships, it's still going to require a ballot initiative, no different than a property tax levy. We would have to come to the citizenry, trustees would have to pass a resolution, and we would have to come to you and say, we would like to implement an income tax now that property taxes are gone. Will you support a X amount property tax? Or X amount income tax? And then the voters would carefully consider that. If it passed, it would get implemented. But that's not something that's going to happen overnight. Now you've got to set up with either the Central Collection Agency, or you got to set up with RETA, Regional Income Tax Authority. You have to get all the accounts, notify all the citizens, notify all the employers. It's going to take some time in order to do that. One of the things being talked about is, can we get the state to fund the schools like they're supposed to? That's been a big argument for a long time. The DeRolf case from 1997, it was Ohio State Supreme Court case that said the way we fund schools in Ohio is unconstitutional. That has been ignored by the legislature since 1998. And so it's on the backs of the local communities to do the lion's share of the funding for the schools. But the state in the last budget bill just lowered the state income tax. I don't know if you're aware of that. They took it down. We're basically a flat tax state at 2.75. There was another higher tier that was in the low 3s. They eliminated that, and they've gone to a 2.75. But you could raise the income tax probably about a point and a half, and make a significant impact to school funding. But That's great, that covers the schools, that covers the local governments, but what do you do with all the other taxing districts? Lakeland Community College can't levy an income tax. Lakeland Community College can't levy a sales tax. Neither can the library, neither can senior services, children's, all these other entities. This would all have to be done at the county level. And counties don't have income tax, so they lose property tax. What are you looking at? Sales tax. And the county, who remembers when they tried to raise sales tax 2 years ago? It was a rough go at the county offices for a while. People were angry. I think it was more because they were doing it on their own and not because, if they would have put it to a vote of the people, and so they may put that to a vote of the people, hey, you want to support these entities, then we're going to need to raise the sales tax and then come up with a distribution formula to take in that extra revenue and then push it to these various entities. So, yeah. So, sales tax. Sales tax is great. It's a consumption tax. Some people say it's regressive. I don't disagree. But it's not authorized below the county level unless you're a special district. Lake Tran is a special district. Lake Tran is funded by sales tax. So they have a 0.5% sales tax, and then the county has sales tax. The county's current tax rate is 1%, and then the state sales tax is 5.75. You can't really take sales tax below the county level. It becomes impractical. Mentor would do very, very well if they were allowed to implement a sales tax, but Leroy Township, not so much. There's just, there wouldn't be any, they have a gas station, Cap's Restaurant, but there's not enough there. And there's a lot of small communities, think Kirtland Hills, Waite Hill, some of those small bedroom communities. They don't have any. There's nothing to sales tax. Some of them don't have gas stations or convenience stores, so it's not really practical. So you have to do it at the county level. So the county could raise the sales tax rate, and they could distribute it through a local government, through a formula, local government fund formula. But how much does it help the other small taxing districts? Statewide sales tax for schools, that was kicked around until they calculated what that would look like. Schools need $17 billion. That's how much of the $22 billion is going to schools. You get about $1.5 billion per 1%. So you're talking about an increase of probably 10% sales tax and maybe a little bump. Well, that's on top of the 5.75, so you're getting into the 15s. You will cripple every manufacturing company in the state of Ohio. Because if I make widgets, I make hydraulic fittings. There's a company in Willoughby that makes hydraulic fittings. And I sell those to customers all over the United States. Well, I have to charge sales tax. And if I have a competitor in Indiana or Illinois that makes a very similar hydraulic fitting, and now I have to raise my prices to accommodate the sales tax, or actually I'm not raising the prices, I'm just tacking on to the sale price, they're going to look elsewhere. And that goes for everything that's manufactured in the state. So, anybody within, Lake County's all going to, you might as well put an extra lane on I-90 for everybody going to Erie, Pennsylvania to go buy their major purchases, their TVs, their washers, their dryers, etc. In southern Ohio, you're either going to go to West Virginia if you're on the Marietta side, or you're going to go to Kentucky. If you're over by Dayton, you might sneak over to Indiana. If you're up by Toledo, you're going to go to Michigan or Indiana. You're going to cripple everything on the outer edges of the state. So, yes, sir.
Well, and you can go to Indiana, but technically in Ohio, you would still owe a use tax on that, so you would owe the difference to Ohio, technically now, with people do that on their income tax return or not?
I think that's true, but I think that would be very difficult to enforce.
Oh, impossible.
Yeah, the only time that would come into play is obviously a vehicle purchase because you have to register it in the state. But outside of that, I don't register my washer and dryer. I don't register my refrigerator. I think that would be an extremely difficult thing to enforce and hold people to. So, right now, like I said, the local rate cannot exceed 2.25. Lake County is currently at 1.5. So there's room to grow without a vote of the people, but yeah, I don't see that happening. So sales tax would be very difficult at the statewide level. You could, and then depending on what the state legislature does, they could say, you know what? To help offset the loss of property taxes, we're going to allow the local rate, instead of 2.25, we're going to take that to 4.25. And you can increase taxes up to 4% locally to support all these other entities. There's all kinds of ideas being kicked around. None of them have turned into bills. The legislature doesn't go back to work until October 1st. So I think we'll see a flurry of activity in October, November, maybe early December.
And it turned into about 18.2% tax total, including the local, and if you had to roll the schools in, so we're just shy of 20% tax.
Yeah, so Mr. Golding says anywhere from 18 to 20% once you factor in everything I mentioned. Property tax doesn't look so bad at that point.
So your $30,000 car purchase is now a $36,000 purchase. That's a $6,000 or a $6,000 add-on. So
That's
yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Property tax doesn't look so bad.
Yeah. So this is what everybody's working on right now outside of the Abolish Property Taxes group is property tax reform. This is changing almost daily. I follow a couple of blogs, but there's talks about, and some of these I personally think are easy. Homestead exemption increases for seniors and low income. Like I said, it was at 40,000. They took it to. They said, "Oh, we increased the homestead exemption. We took it to 42.5." Gee, thanks. And quite frankly, I thought that was insulting. But they need meaningful reform and increases to homestead exemption. I think this is low-hanging fruit right here. Andy Rose's personal opinion. Do not foreclose on an owner-occupied home. Don't even have it out there as an option. I don't know that it happens very often. I gotta think that's extremely, extremely, extremely rare. But it's a law. It's on the books. I would immediately eliminate that. You want to foreclose on a commercial property that has gone, that's not doing well. You want to go after a rental home where it's not owner occupied and go after the renter that way. Fine. There's talk of capping increases on the reevaluation so that you don't experience these 20, 30, sometimes 40% increases in your property value. There's talk of capping that to the rate of inflation. I think that's possible. There's one that says set a percentage of home value as a property tax. I basically think that's what we do now. No one's really flushed that. I can't find any hard data on that one, but it's something that is kicked around in one of the working groups. This one's been bantered about. Freeze the values of taxes on unrealized gains. Housing values get adjusted only when a property transfers or sells. How many of you are familiar with California and Prop 13? Because that's what this is. And that has caused lots of problems in California, because what you end up with is somebody who purchased their house in 1977 for $55,000 And so they're paying taxes on 55,000, while the folks 2 doors down bought their house a year and a half ago for $450,000. So this homeowner's paying $1,000 in property taxes. This homeowner's paying $10,000 for the exact same government services. The other thing it does is nobody moves. Why? I mean, if my taxable value on my house is $55,000 in a $400,000 neighborhood, I'm not moving. I'm gonna remodel my house and put a bedroom on the first floor if I don't have one, or I'm gonna take that half bath and make it a full bath. My kids are gonna move in with me because now I'm older and I need help, but nobody's moving. And it causes a strain in the already tough housing market, and nobody moves. So I don't see this one. While I understand unrealized gains in the argument there, if you Google California Proposition 13, there's lots of information on that over the years and the pitfalls of that, and I don't think we want to do that. There was talk of removing local schools from property tax at the state. We talked about that in taxing alternatives, but remove schools from your property tax bill. So how would you feel if they magically took 60% of your property tax bill away? Everybody would say, wow, that'd be amazing. But the trade-off is the state income tax, state sales tax. There are repercussions for that. So there's other types of reform that are being talked about. One of them that came out, this was in the governor's working group, was consolidate some of this stuff. Why do Lake County, as an example, has 9 library districts. Do we need 9 library districts? Do we need 9 library directors, 9 reference librarians, 9 tech services, material managers, etc.? Or can we have 1 and then just have branch managers out there to handle the day-to-day business of that particular branch? Consolidate school districts. The plan that was floated that I read took, anybody know how many school districts are in the state of Ohio? There's over 620 school districts in the state of Ohio. The plan that was I saw took it to 94 school districts. So you have 88 counties. Each county gets a school district, and then they carved out the 6 big ones: Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Youngstown, Toledo, and Dayton. So those 6 mega school districts, jumbo ones, stayed in place. Everybody else it would become the Lake County School District. You would still have Riverside High School, Menor High School. You would still have rivalries between Eastlake North and Willoughby South, but the administration and the consolidation of services, they feel would be a significant savings, because you wouldn't be paying 620 school administrators, assistant administrators, curriculum development, all the different things that come, CFOs, and all those things. I can't imagine that the school associations are going to support that, but I don't know. There's talk of eliminating small villages and townships. The example that was tossed to me was Vinton County, which is obviously south of us. That entire county has about 50,000 residents. The county. There are 15 townships in Vinton County. 15 local governments in a county of 50,000 people. So they use that as one example. Another example is some of the small villages and townships across the state. In Lake County, you would look at Lakeline, Timberlake, Grand River, very small communities that could be rolled up into the neighboring cities and easily absorb their services. I don't know how much money that actually saves, but it's something worth discussing. Then there's creative taxing that's been kicked out. This is another proposal that came out, was no school tax on owner-occupied homes. So school taxes would apply to all commercial properties, school taxes would apply to rental properties, but an owner-occupied home would not have school tax attached to it. I don't think the business community likes this, is my guess, because the levy passage rate would be astronomical. Schools will come in and say, I need another I need 4 more mills of property taxes, and all the owner-occupied homes, I mean, Concord Township is 91% owner-occupied. So the businesses would really, so I think the business community would have a little bit of a hard time with that. And remember that, to do that, that would take about 10 billion, that would take about 7 billion of the 17 billion away. So the state would still need to make up 7 billion. So you've got an income tax, sales tax to make up that. So there's still going to be a bit of an imbalance. So those are some of the things that are being popped around the state. I will say there are some good media coverage through the Ohio channel, talking about property taxes, property tax reform, alternate forms of revenue. I know that, and I'm not plugging, but Chris Quinn, who is the editor of Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer, he does a podcast, and he's been talking about, he's been doing a good job of going straight down the middle and just talking about, he puts his little opinion at the end, but he talks about, hey, this group's trying to do this group's trying to do that, and he kind of lets you know who's doing what. And I think once the state legislature gets back into session in early October, I think we'll know a lot more, because we'll start seeing what bills are proposed and what these various organizations are going to pitch that may gain favor with the state legislature. So more to go. We already talked about this and how are we going to fund. You know, this is Andy Rose's personal opinion. I'm a big fan of Metro Parks. I walk Metro Parks by my house every day. Girdle Road and Jordan Creek are some of the most visited parks here in Concord Township. You know, so you've got a lot to figure out when it comes to that. Now I want to talk about a couple of myths, and then I'll wrap this up. You know, one of the things, the Abolished Property Tax Group, and I'm going to pick on them just a little bit. The Abolished Property Tax Group has previously pushed out information. Hey, what are you going to do with all those extra funds if property taxes are eliminated? You know, you can fix up your house, you can save, you can help your family, you know, all these other things you can do with all this extra money that you're going to have. Okay? That's quite frankly, this is Andy Rose talking, that's nonsense. Okay, that's a myth. Because if property tax is eliminated, we're going to pay through a different venue. Whether it's sales tax, income tax, fees, somehow, some way, you've got to keep basic services going, and you've got to keep schools operating. Okay? The state can fund the schools, it's in the Constitution, and you know, everybody talks about, well, the lottery. How many of you remember when the lottery was instituted in the 70s? And they said, well, all the money's going to go to the schools will be just fine, we're going to make them flush with cash. The problem is, all the lottery money does go to the schools. That is a true statement. But when they instituted the lottery, not long after they instituted the lottery, they said, okay, wow, the lottery's generating, I'm just pulling basic numbers, the lottery's going to generate $1 million that goes to the schools. The state's giving them $1.5 million. Well, the schools will really be flush with cash. So what did the state do? They clawed back $1 million. or 800,000. And they diverted that money to other projects and other state-funded things. So they were correct. All the lottery money goes to the schools except for the operating costs and prize money, but the net profits of the lottery go to the schools, but the state reeled back the funding that was made up by the lottery. So it became a shell game. And I don't know that there's any way to untwist that at this point after 50 years. Okay, everyone needs to consolidate. School districts need to consolidate. There's too many damn administrators. Libraries need to consolidate. Local governments need to consolidate. Well, that's great. But consolidation is costly. Consolidation is time consuming. You can't just flip a switch and magically integrate everybody. First off, during the consolidation process, who's running the show? Okay? Who's the governing board and who appoints the initial governing board to start this? Okay? Let's talk about labor contracts. Okay? You're going to merge, in Lake County, you've got 9 school districts, you've got 9 teacher contracts. You think they're going to pick the contract with the lowest wage to merge? Nope. So there's an increased cost there. Okay? And then, you know, how are they financed? We go back to how they're financed. Nothing really changes there. I'll call out, at the risk of singling him out, I want to call out Brian Massey. He's one of the leaders of this Abolish Property Taxes group, and he's been the mouthpiece that's been out speaking on I've seen him on the news and so forth. And he said, just in his interview down in Columbus, he said, like I've told my township administrator, just send me a bill, Andy. Well, that's problematic. So I'm going to send a bill for township services. Is the school going to send you a bill for school services? Metro Park's going to send you a bill? What about all the other entities? The county's going to send a bill? You can't, you know, and I know that there's several in his group that support this direct billing, but I think there are logistical challenges. You've got multiple billings. How do you collect that? There's the cost of administering that. And so forth, and then, you know, collection rates, I think would go down from what property taxes are collected at about 98%. I don't know that if we sent direct bills to everybody that we would get a 98% collection rate. And then, how do I enforce it? Now, I'm not an advocate. I'm not going to come and knock on your door and turn you upside down and shake the change out of your pocket like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. I'm not going to foreclose or, you know, but, you know, what are my enforcement measures to encourage people to pay? I think that's just fraught with logistical challenges. So 2 more, and these are my pet peeves right here. The Abolish Taxes group is several of them say, but, you know, there's no checks and balances at the state or local level that can control the spending by the taxing authorities. We've all heard that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are the check and balance. The reason your tax bill is because you voted yes on a levy. The reason that levies get put on the ballot is because you voted for the people that voted to put them on the ballot. The check and balance is at the ballot box. If you don't like the direction somebody somewhere is going, the time to speak is at the ballot box. It doesn't get any plainer than that. Voters decide what to fund, and voters decide who leads the community. And if they're doing a good job, they get to stay in office. If they're not doing a good job, then you have a bunch of opposition, and may the best person win. The last thing is, I've been accused of fear-mongering, and this is a fear-mongering session. I don't feel that I've been fear-mongering, but in full disclosure, it's been put out there that, and this is a quote, there will be fear-mongering sessions held by Concord Township officials. We have to pay them their salaries and benefits so that they can tell everyone that the whole society will collapse if the government cannot continue to price you out of your home with their ever-increasing property taxes. That is bunk. Plain and simple, okay? This is an informational class. I will talk to anybody at any time. I have and will continue to do so. The trustees have talked to lots of folks. Everybody's approachable. We're happy to share any information we have, and if you want to know what's going on at the local level or in Columbus, I can share with you what I know and what I receive and what we find. It's all out there on reputable websites. I look at the state legislature website to see what bills are introduced. I do that I can't do it daily, it would just drive me crazy. But about once a week or so, we'll go out there and look and see what got introduced and see how anything that's going to impact us. We all have statewide associations. We're part of the Ohio Township Association. And the Ohio Township Association has an employee that's the legislative director, and he feeds us legislative updates once a week so that we know what's coming and what the impact to the townships may be. So I hope this was informative. I tried to keep it not too long. I'm happy to continue to answer questions. The one thing I'll leave you with is, if somebody asks you to sign a petition, I'm not here to tell you to sign it or not sign it. That is a personal decision. But what I will ask is, ask that person that's asking you to sign a petition, ask them for a plan on how revenue will be replaced to protect basic government services, and see what their answer is. Ask that question before you sign a petition. Yes?
So the trustees voted in, and the trustees help decide which direction the township's going to go, with maybe putting something on the levy that we can vote on, choose to up or down. Those trustees, are they there permanently, Andy?
No.
So they get voted in how often?
Every 4 years.
And there's
Every 2 years.
for two of them.
Right, like this year, 2 trustees are up for re-election, and in 2 years from then, if they win, they'll get a 4-year term. 2 years from now, 1 trustee and the fiscal officer who are elected will go up for a 4-year term. So every 2 years, you have 2 of the 4 elected officials up for re-election.
So you're saying anyone in this room, if they wanted to run for trustee and affect change at the township level, they could do so? So
That's a true statement.
So therefore,
Where are you going?
I'm wondering, we have,
You realize those are my bosses?
yes, I do.
Thank you.
Well, both of them are on the ballot. Did Mr. Massey petition to run for trustee by chance to affect change at the township?
Both of our trustees are unopposed this election cycle.
That's
I'll
interesting.
just leave it at that.
Okay.
Which two?
Mr. Dondorfer and Mrs. Lucci are up for re-election, and they are unopposed.
So if they don't get enough signatures, or this thing falls through, then is this dead, or?
They can continue to collect signatures. I don't know if there's a sunset date. I know their goal is by November of 26. If they don't make November of 26, I don't know if they can just infinitum forever collect signatures until they get there. The problem with that is, you get 2 years down the road, the signatures aren't going to be, a lot of the signatures aren't going to be valid because, you know, Joe Fabete signed it when he lived in Jerkwater Township, and now he lives in the neighboring community, or the neighboring county, and so that's no longer a valid signature because that's not where he lives. Folks sign the petition and they sit out there for 2 years, and then he passes away. That's an invalid, So I don't know where the line is drawn, but I would think if it doesn't go by November of 26, I think at that point it would be very difficult. But I do personally, and this is Andy Rose talking, I am not speaking on behalf of the trustees, the county, the state, or anybody else. I think hard work is needed in Columbus with our state legislature to do some meaningful property tax reform to fix some of the problems that we have, especially with these 30% and 40% reevaluations. I think the homestead exemption needs to get fixed, eliminate foreclosures on owner-occupied loans. I think that's the easiest thing to fix, and they could fix that in 10 minutes in Columbus if they would get off their dupla. Yes, sir.
So currently how the abolishment of property tax stands, and with no way to fund what's currently being taken away, isn't that the same as defunding the police and the fire? Does anyone know what happens when you have inadequate fire and police?
Yeah, no one's quite gone down that you're defunding, because they're saying that the legislature's going to have to jump into action quickly and find replacement revenue. It will, Concord Township, we sat down, the trustees, the fiscal officer, myself, and Cindy Sadler, who's our assistant in finance, who's in HR, and she's great. We sat down and figured out we could operate for about 47 days.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
What happens when you have inadequate fire and police, besides crime and stuff?
Well,
Your insurance goes up.
Yes.
It'll go up more than your property tax.
that is correct.
Yes.
That is correct.
That's all I had.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, I will be here afterwards for a few minutes. I don't know, I think all my business cards are gone, so I'll give you my contact. Right, I'm real easy to find. And one shameless plug, the third Thursday of every month, I host Coffee with the Administrator in this room. It's coffee and donuts, and it's open to anybody to come in, and we start about 9 a.m. It usually runs till about 10:30, and the only thing that's off the table again is national politics. I won't delve into that, but we talk about state initiatives, we talk about local stuff, we talk about sports. It's a great way to connect with the residents and get feedback on different things. So, and then finally, for those of you that live in Concord Township, on the website we have the community survey for the upcoming comprehensive plan, and we're also having a big open house where you have the chance to provide input on these interactive boards. That is coming up on September 16th. We're doing it at Fire Station 1 from 5:30 to 7:30. You can bring, we're going to have activities for the kids. They can touch the fire truck, talk to a firefighter while you are doing the interactive work. So please come by and help support the comprehensive plan and help guide us in the direction we want to go over the next 10 to 20 years.
Is that questionnaire still open?
I'm sorry?
Is that questionnaire still open?
That questionnaire is going to be open probably for another month. Yep. So please fill out the online questionnaire. It's really good.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Andy.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.